to stay.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Boards, a podcast dedicated to the actions and interests of skaters beyond skateboarding. My guest today, Oisín Tammas, is a lifelong skateboarder, writer and storyteller from England. Alongside co-founder Moch Simos, Oisín launched the diversity skateboarding magazine Skateism. He was also involved in the launch of free movement skateboarding in Athens, Greece. He helped organize the second edition of Pushing Borders in Malmö, Sweden in 2019, and in recent times he became the communications manager and chief writer of the Skateroom, a Brussels-based organization which works with artists to fund social projects related to skateboarding. So here's my conversation with Oisín Tammas. I hope you'll enjoy it. So how about you tell me a little bit about yourself growing up and how skating started for you?
Yeah.
Can you just tell me again how to pronounce your first name accurately?
Yeah, it's Oisín.
Oisín. Okay.
Yeah, that's an Irish name. My mum's side of the family, Irish background, and I got the name. I mean, even my the name I use, Oisín Tammas. The Tammas is actually it's from the Scottish side of my family. It's the Scottish rendition of Thomas, I believe. But it's actually a middle name, and I use it as a surname because my full name is so sort of ludicrous that it would never fit on a colophon of a magazine, right? So when I started working for a magazine, I was like, I need to shorten this.
Okay.
So yeah, so actually, growing up, I grew up in a kind of quite uninteresting suburban satellite city to London.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, really nice place. I was very lucky to live there. My family had lived there for a couple of generations, and it's the kind of place you sort of spend most of your childhood trying to set fire to because, you know, there's enough green space that you can go out and make mischief and build bonfires and stuff. But it's close enough to buildings and things that you kind of have to be a little bit careful as well. So it's quite a fun place to grow up. I remember St. Albans always felt super cool until I got to the age where I could drink in pubs, and then suddenly it was like the most boring place on earth. But up until then, when you're skating and like breaking into like, the local like college that had been abandoned for years, and you're jumping 3 sets and like scuffing up your elbows and all of that with your friends, like it's super cool because it's not really built up like London would be. So you're not running into cops as often, but it's also not totally without urban kind of landscape. And it's a really great place as well because it's home to the Pioneer Skate Park, which is like the longest standing UK indoor skate park.
Okay.
And is also kind of a bit of, if you trace back UK skateboarding, it has a real kind of part of the history. It's kind of holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. Like the Death Skateboards crew in all of the Death Skateboards videos, like you've got the Pioneer Skate Park as one of their indoor features. And Jenna Selby, actually, shout out Jenna Selby, who ran Rogue Skateboards and also organised the UK Girls Skate Jams back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
She worked there for a long time and was a bit of a mentor for me, along with like all the other staff members at that skate park. And, she was linked with Lucy Adams, who obviously is an amazing pro skater from the UK.
That's right, yeah.
And who should also have on the podcast, by the way, who's sick. And I think she's now like heading GB England, the Olympic thing, but I don't want to get that wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's funny you mention her because I actually just reached out to her a few days ago.
I remember she was the first like skater I saw demoing at a park where I wanted to bite her style so hard. Like the way she had like super white, like just really cool look, great hair. Like I remember being like, that is a look. So I remember like burnt into my memory from as a kid. So I grew up really around that, and I was home educated, so I had a really liberal family. My mum's side's very kind of anti-establishment, and my dad's super creative, and he was actually a music producer alongside his career for a long time, like making trance music and now making like avant-garde analog synthesizer music and stuff. And my mum was kind of a human rights lawyer, training to do that kind of in the evenings and looking after me and my little brother at home in the day. And I was lucky to have a family who were just down to pitch in and like teach me. So my grandmother taught me English and philosophy and stuff like that. And my mum kind of general guidance towards like what was right and wrong in the world. And my dad did bits of science here and there. My granddad on my mum's side did history, but only like Irish workers' history and communist history, like very specific like, things. So, and then the rest of my time I just spent basically at the Pioneer Skate Park. And so that's how it really kind of came up. And I was the kind of kid who was stealing my mum's skinny jeans, my dad's oversized shirts, listening to like metal music and trying to post like stunt edits to Google Video before YouTube was out, you know, like that was what I was doing.
Do you remember how old you were when you first started like seriously skating, if you can call it that? Or
it's like 9 or 10 years old, I think. Yeah,
okay.
9 or 10 years old. So I'm 28, 29 now. So yeah, coming up to 20 years, which is quite nice. Actually, there's a reflection for you. It's quite nice to realize that. And as I said, like having like people like, the staff at Pioneer Skate Park, and also like Alex Barton, who skates for Love and Skate and also runs ABC Skateboarding in the UK, which is like a kids coaching scene as well.
Okay.
They were always like mentors, and we had this little crew called Original Skaters, which was our name. And within that crew was Will Ascott, who runs Free Movement Skateboarding, the Athenian charity. And
in Athens.
Like exactly. And he's like my oldest friend, like from back in the day. And we used to like, we were tearing around that abandoned college, like Ollie and those 3 sets when we were like 12 years old, making those edits.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever try to go on the sponsor route and try to like make it as a pro skater? Was that a kind of a daydream, or was skateboarding always just a fun outlet for you, and you didn't really, try to get a career out of it, basically?
It's kind of funny, like in retrospect, I remember spending a lot of hours sitting at home drawing, like just with a pen, like just drawing magazine covers or like I'd draw around like the shape of a shoe and then like redo the colors or make a pro model board designs and stuff. But there was something about that I always enjoyed more than the idea. Like I did one competitive run, and it still haunts me to this day, at the Pioneer at one of the open jams. And it was like 60 seconds. And I just tried to like backside board slide along and down the kink rail. Okay. And I just did that for a minute and didn't land it once. And I remember the feeling of like tension, of like feeling everyone watching you. And I was like, this sucks. Like really wasn't for me. That might have been reflected in the fact that, throughout, my career and stuff, I've always attempted in some way to kind of put the stories that I wanted to tell or wanted to help other people put out there, like try and platform those rather than have my opinion be the kind of main thing. Because you get some journalists who have their columns and have their real opinion side, and I think they're really fun to read, but I've never been that kind of writer. So I think it was reflected way back then that I was kind of really into the skate world, but I wasn't going to follow that kind of thing. Like, again, it's like the type of skaters who were attracting me were the type of skaters who also had other stuff going on. And I also wasn't like super at ease in like big crews of like football guys or like skater guys or whatever. Like for me, I was always a little bit on the fringes of feeling comfortable in certain crews. And I was lucky that at the Pioneer, there was a nice community there. But in the years between when I left St. Albans and went to study and when I moved to Greece eventually, I kind of lost touch with skateboarding as a regular thing because I couldn't find that scene of people that I felt like was accepting in the same way as they had been back in the day. Sure. It was like the dark ages of skating for me a little bit. It was that kind of bit where you're like, where are all the kind of non-traditional skater crews? Like, and why do I need to love these particular types of skaters or these particular types of like these aspects of skateboarding? Why do I have to love them in order to be able to hang out here? That was a weird kind of discovery for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to talk about that for sure. So you studied literature and philosophy after you graduated from high school. So can you tell me a little bit about how you first started your career as a storyteller, basically? Because I guess that kind of sums up what you do. You're a writer, you're a communications manager now for the Skateroom. We'll talk about that eventually. But yeah, can you tell me how you got interested in literature and philosophy?
Yeah, it was definitely when I was home educated and, I was reading. I probably spent a lot of those hours at home when I wasn't really properly studying, like playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater or reading like teenage fiction. And like my mum would just routinely kind of be like, you should be reading Simone de Beauvoir and Pride and Prejudice and Camus and stuff like this. And And I did as much as I could to kind of, let's say, to follow those instructions. And occasionally I would fall back to Harry Potter hidden behind like whatever she was trying to put in my hand. But, after a while, it started to really strike me that I could, being home educated, I could kind of decide what I wanted to follow. Like, I don't think I had a science lesson properly till I went back into school for my GCSEs, like, which is 14 or 15 or whatever. Like, I just didn't ever find it that interesting. And it is interesting how syllabus-driven education, this is my experience, but syllabus-driven education can kind of be, you don't realize that you can pick it up really fast once you're in a headspace where you understand the value of education. But when you're not in that place and you don't know what the value is and you're not passionate about certain things, it's very hard to kind of take in the information and keep it there. Yeah. So when I was at school, before I came out of school initially, I didn't like literature, I didn't like reading, I didn't like anything. And then by the time I went back into school, I'd found this real love for literature, for writing as well. I was trying to write a novel all the time throughout my whole life, just always trying to like write little stories and things like this. And then when I got to about the age of 15, 16, I already knew like I want to study this course at this university, which was UEA in Norwich. And weirdly, again, Will Ascott from Free Movement also ended up going to the same university. So we kind of continued. We've always kind of lived in this like parallel.
It looks like
parallel lines. Yeah. So went there, and then when I was out there, I was doing little bits. I think I did like a couple of articles for the student newspaper on like, there was a kind of issue that was happening at the time where the UK government were pressuring academics and people in institutions to report instances of extremism to the police. And it was called Prevent, and it was largely to basically target like Islamic people who, if there was any suspicion of any kind of extremism or whatever, you'd basically just be able to kick them out of the course. It was this very suspicious like witch hunt thing that was going on at the time. So I remember that was like the first time I did an article that I felt kind of engaged with politically. And then from there, little bits of work doing music reviews and stuff really, but that was about it. And it wasn't until I moved to Greece for my Erasmus period that like it all started picking up.
Okay. So you went to Greece, so that was towards the end of your studies, right? So you did like an Erasmus program over there?
It was in my second year I went to Erasmus, so that was 2014.
Okay.
And it was a weird thing because I'm sure on your side, like in the European side, like Erasmus is very common. Like everyone kind of knows what it is.
Sure.
But in the UK, I was the only person I knew who did it, which is a very crazy thing. So, and I remember when I went, it was just after, 2014, it was really a tough time for Greece, politically, economically. And they actually said, like, we cannot guarantee that this is going to be a fruitful Erasmus period. We can't guarantee, like, we don't know who's going to be your advisor. We don't know who's going to, we don't know anything, basically. You can go if you want. And I was just like, well, it sounds really hot. And I'm reading loads of Socrates because I'm at uni. So I was like, I'm going to go to Greece. And so I just did it. And I remember waking up like 3 a.m. I was super scared of flying, so I did like a 2-week interrail to get there. And I woke up at 3 a.m. and was like, I literally had this moment where I'm like, I'm going back to bed. I'm not going. Like, screw this. I can't do this. It's too scary, all of that. And then just sort of took myself like a zombie, and then woke up sort of 2 weeks later, was in Exarchia, this anarchist district, like with a bunch of people I didn't know in this like weird squat student house. And it was just like, well, I guess I'm here then. And there you were.
Yeah. It looks like it was a very important period of time for you, because that's where you met with I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Moch Simos. I'm butchering his Moch. The other co-founder of Skateism, and you also helped. I think that was a little bit later, but you helped. You mentioned Will Ascott. You helped him start, or at least you helped him a little bit with the foundation of free movement skateboarding out there. So can you tell me a little bit about going to Athens and how everything kind of shaped up for you over there?
For sure. Yeah, honestly, I look back on Athens and particularly that first Erasmus trip, because I sort of lived maybe 4 years total backwards and forwards between Athens over the last decade, and not quite a decade, 8 years, but it's probably the most formative thing in my kind of adult life, because everything came out of arriving in Athens and Googling skateboarding in Athens and finding Skateism.com, which back then was this kind of blog / kind of sticker project / little video. It did like a bit of local scene coverage as well. And that was run by Moch. And there were a couple of other people who had helped him along the way kind of grow that. It was really, I'm always kind of credit where credit's due in terms of the co-founding aspect. Like, it was Moch's concept. And in 2014, 2 years after he'd kind of got it up to that point, and we met on the street one day. Like I'd emailed basically skateism.com on there, or they'd gone through their contact form, and Moch was like, yeah, come meet us at this local skate shop and we'll go out together. And so we did that.
Okay.
Within a couple of weeks, like he'd invited me to write for Skateism and to do some little blog posts and all these things. And it was kind of quite clear that he wasn't really satisfied with what it was. And, you know, I wasn't interested in like writing, you know, like reposting Thrasher's reposts of content. You know what I mean? It was one of those kind of situations to begin with. But what we did have was this real love of this kind of non-traditional side of skating. And it was, I mean, Athens, the scene, because the industry was obliterated by the crisis. Like the skateboarding industry was obliterated to the point where you had pro skaters who had been legendary, really like skating with, you know, anyone in the street, and like careers being kind of ended or massively put on hold, people having to get like juggle multiple jobs to kind of keep themselves going, where before they had sponsors and things like this. Like it was the most DIY, like we can't trust our government to give us what we need, so we're going to take matters into our own hands, like seeing. And it inspired me again after that kind of dark period of not really knowing what skating was to me for a while, you know. And I'd been gotten into so many conversations with Moch and with that kind of crew who are very artistic people as well. And, you know, it was like, what really turns us on about skateboarding? And it was like, well, at that time, Skateism was really coming up. It was sort of started. You were seeing more NGOs pull up and were reflecting the kind of thing that I'd seen as a kid in my little bubble of like, oh no, you know, like skateboarding doesn't have to be this real kind of traditional thing, and it doesn't have to follow the lines of sort of Western or American culture that's been associated with it. And you were seeing that, like, you know, for example, with Skateism, communities in the Middle East where it was like a higher uptake for girls than boys, for example. And you're like, wow, this is planting the seed for a culture that's going to be unrecognizable to the Western skate world in a few years. And like, we can learn from that. We can learn from this like fresh take where we don't have the shadow of kind of, I don't know, West Coast surfer style. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying
of course, but
there are other manifestations of it. And that's what I liked about that. And so from Moch, we chatted and we thought, well, okay, if I'm going to be doing some writing for Skateism, let's write the stories that are interesting. So we did, you know, we were doing interviews with Oliver Perkovic, who you had on. That was my first big scoop, was Ollie. I remember, like, he was like the first person to really grant us, like, as a small blog, like a proper story about like the 5 years of Skateism or something, I think it was at that point. And then from there you get linked to other people, and you know, then was doing an interview with Lucy Adams, and then was doing an interview with Jenna Selby, who I mentioned before, and then moving to different communities, different cultures. And then from there it kind of grew, because the more people who were getting involved or were offering to write for us or wanted to, let's say, you know, just give a little bit of support to this kind of new sort of publication, the more it developed. We never had this idea that it was going to be, you know, in any way like LGBTQ plus focused or non-Western focused or Women X focused or anything like that. Came off the back of the interests of Moch, the interests of myself, the interests of people who came along the way, who every single one of them who's ever on any credit for Skateism fully deserves to be on this podcast, because they all have such an amazing like take on the world. So it just kind of came from there. And, you know, a couple of really great breaks along the way. And the big person who came on board who really helped was Sam Maguire, who is... the photo editor, right? Exactly. He was the previous photo editor. So we both left in 2020. But back then he was kind of the first person we reached out to and said, you know, this is what we're doing. Do you want to be involved? And Sam came on board. And I have to thank Sam for so much of what I've been able to do, because he's been the person along the way who's gone like, yep, I'll connect you with that person. I believe in what you're doing. Yep, this is a good idea, but maybe do it a bit more this way. Sam's been there, and I still talk to him every week for other projects, and I just count him very, very, very dearly. And I think it was thanks to him largely, as well as everyone else along the way, that Skateism was able to do any of the stuff it did. And I mean, it was an amazing time, but I think also because I know that all good things kind of come to an end in terms of my involvement in 2019, 2020, it was time for me to kind of step away for sure.
Yeah. So that's when you stopped working with them at Skateism, and also I just mentioned very briefly before free movement skateboarding in Athens.
Oh yeah.
So how did you get involved with them, and how did you help them out basically?
Yeah, free movement. I think it was 2016 that free movement started, and Will, obviously being a very close friend of mine, he sent me a message and he was saying, I'm going to volunteer. I mean, Will's an amazing guy. Will spent most of his adult life not getting a job or working he'd spent up to that point just working in bars and stuff in order to save up enough money so he could then go volunteer, for various skate projects and stuff. Mm-hmm. So he went to Palestine, did the Skate Pal thing, which is where he met Ruby Mateja, who's the co-founder of Free Movement with him. And that's right. Both of them then decided, after Will had done a volunteership in Athens with this community center out there, which focused on like refugee communities, and he spoke to a charity out there and said, I have this idea for this. I always laugh with him about it. He had this idea to like cycle round some ramps in the back of a trailer to like camps and teach kids. And Athens is all hills. It's like hills. It's like San Francisco hill bombing, like taken to the extreme. So like I always laugh at him, the idea that he thought he was going to like get these like robo legs and be like cycling a skate park up and down the hills. But he came back and we would chat. I remember we had a drink in this bar called Homesick, which I still go to whenever I'm in Athens. And he just sort of like put the idea out. He's like, this is what I want to do. And we kind of shot the idea backwards and forwards just to help him kind of mull it over. And then literally, I think it was a year later or a few months later, I went back to St. Albans. We met up in the bar we were growing up playing gigs in as kids. And he said, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Here's the first logo sketch. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow I've got my meeting with that same charity to see if they'll fund me. And yeah, it all kind of happened. And then, I was out in Athens when he moved over there, and him and Ruby drove their van out from England. It got burgled along the way in Italy. They got all of their shit taken. It was crazy.
Shit.
And then they arrived, set up fresh. And at one point we were just, again, a lot of these conversations with me will seem to happen in bars, but he was like, I need someone to do the communications side of things, help us out with that. Do you want to do it? And yeah, from there I just was like, yeah, sure. So we kind of started bunked up all together in this like dodgy house in the anarchist district, Exarchia, where we were getting routinely tear gas, like almost like clockwork every Thursday night. You'd just be sitting there watching a skate video or something, and then there'd just be like that smell, and you'd start going blind, and you'd just be like, right, everyone into the back room, and you'd all just kind of pile into the back room, put your towel under the door, wait out the tear gas. We used to come home and we came home once and it was amazing. Like, this is a classic Athens scene. You're a skater, there's a guy on a moped, so you hold onto the back of the moped and there's like a trail of 4 of you being dragged up the hill on a moped by some stranger, right? So we let go as we got to our street, and as we turned the street, there's a car on fire outside our front door, and literally outside the front door, like you couldn't have walked into your front door, it was on fire. And there was a woman standing next to the car kind of crying, being like, oh, my car got set on fire by a Molotov cocktail that gets routinely thrown on the street we were living on and stuff, between the anarchists and the cops. Okay. So that was a crazy bit of time, actually. And it was amazing. Like but now it's really great to see that over the last 5 years of free movement, that they've gone from, really this grassroots outreach program to being something much more settled, they're much happier out there, and everything's more consistent. But those kind of early days of starting it all out, it was amazing to be a part of it at all. And I have to say, I don't have the gall and like the strength that Will and Ruby both show, and the people who volunteer for them and work for them today, like to go to the sessions every day back then, to do all that, and then come home and be living. Back then, we're living in that kind of environment and stuff. I was the guy behind the computer. But,
yeah. I see.
I definitely did some sessions while I was out there, and it was an amazing, humbling experience and all of that. But I mean, my mental health couldn't take it for as long as
well, you were there for a little bit. You worked with them for at least 2 or 3 years, I think, right? So
I was there for a year with them, and then I worked remote for another year from London, and then I went out there again routinely over the last few years. So I've been kind of consulting with them for a lot longer as well. Yeah.
Okay. Have you been able to go back since the pandemic started, or?
I have, yeah. I went back in January briefly. I remember I went back in like January before COVID really hit Europe, and there's a video on my phone which I watch all the time, which I'm with my little brother on top of a mountain in Athens, and you can hear in the background him like, UK confirmed third case of COVID-19, and it's like a flashback. We're like, wow, third case, like the innocence.
Yeah,
but yeah, you
exactly.
know, I've been going back and forward with to work. We did a rebrand recently for Free Movement, which I was heavily involved in. So I went and stayed up there and worked very closely with the team on that. And then prior to that, you know, as I was stepping away from Skateism, there was a lot of kind of meetings out there and a lot of like figuring out the logistics of it. And, you know, Skateism still going with Moch and Denia Kopita, who's editing it now, who's also keep track of her, rad skater, amazing writer, storyteller. She also works with Free Movement still. So, you know, it's like the scene out there is changing and developing all the time. So like, and it's home, it's a home for sure. And I learned Greek when I was out there-ish, so I can speak well enough to go back, you know.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I've been to Athens once, but I really loved it. It's really beautiful, and I'm sure you must have had a great time out there. And yeah, the skate scene seems really amazing and super like open-minded and inclusive, and yeah, it looks really, really cool.
It's cool, and there's a lot more in terms of like Ruby is running is it the Philaki? I can't remember what they're called, but they're the kind of like non-traditional sessions there, because there's a big kind of scene of women skaters, queer skaters, non-binary skaters, and everything is growing in those kind of areas right now in Greece as well, which is like it is all around the world really. Like, so it's awesome to see that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I also saw that you worked a bit with Pushing Borders for their 2018 and 2019 editions in London and Malmö. I was interested in knowing how you worked with them. Basically, I think you were like a consultant with them. What was your participation, your involvement, basically with both editions? Yeah,
like for anyone who doesn't know, Pushing Borders was a conference for kind of progressing conversations around skateboarding, and both in terms of the culture and the industry, and the aim really was to, you know, invite different voices on and see where these debates would end up and how it would impact skateboarding as a result. And the first edition was in London in 2018. I hope that's right. I'm trusting you've done the research, because that whole period of time is like just
a
stress.
bit of a blur. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm sure. Yeah.
But 2018, and so that was also the year that Skateism had sort of, I can't remember which issue of the magazine we were on there, maybe the second or third, and I was trying to distribute some magazines at Street League when it was in London, and I ran into the gang who were organising Pushing Borders back then, which was Theo and Charlie from Skate Pal, Tom and Sander, who are both academics in skate-related subjects, and all these people, again, amazing to have on the podcast because it's sick. Yeah. Stu, who's a member of was an original like Long Live South Bank dude, and now does an amazing job trying to find public space for skate related projects. But again, I can't remember exactly where he's at now. And Phil, who worked with Skate Power as well and sort of emceed and helped arrange the event as well. And I ran into them outside the Olympic Park where the Street League was happening, and we got talking and we realized who each other kind of was, because we hadn't met in person. And they'd invited Moch and myself to sit on a panel that year specifically to talk about this way of changing conversations in skateboarding to some degree, and it was really amazing. Like, I met so many interesting people, and the next year, you know, it was just sort of a logical thing that when the Malmö edition started coming up, the crew invited me, very kindly of them, to help organize the event. And specifically on my side, I focused on the kind of creative, guiding the kind of visualized aspect, but also putting together some of the panels, particularly like those that circulated around the subjects that, you know, we were covering in the magazine at the time.
Sure.
And so when we went to it was like, it was one of the craziest 2 weeks of my life. And I think anyone who was there will attest to sort of how transformative it had felt, because, you know, there were a lot of difficult moments, a lot of challenging moments, and a lot of beautiful revelations as well. And, you know, to this day, it happens all the time. I meet people on Zoom and they're like, oh yeah, no, we met at Pushing Borders. And it's like, I've drawn a blank. Like, there was so much going on that it's actually impossible to recall everything that went on there. But it was amazing time, man. I couldn't be more thankful to all of them for doing so much work to make that happen, and for letting me be a part of it at all. You know, it was awesome.
Yeah, it looked. I've been watching a bit of the talks that happened at the Malmö edition, And the panels are incredible, and the conversations and the topics, and it's just really, really cool. Actually, just I wrote to. I keep butchering names. I'm very sorry, but I think his name is Sander Holskins or something like that.
Holskins, yeah.
That's who's one of the organizers, one of the directors, I think, of Pushing Borders.
Exactly.
And I was asking him if there was going to be like a new edition of it sometime soon, and he was like, "Well, we'd love to do it again, but with COVID and everything, obviously everything's been on hold. But hopefully in 2023, maybe. I don't know about this year, but."
Yeah, I'm praying for it as well. Like, I ask Theo, I see Theo probably the most when I'm in London and stuff. And I ask him, what's going on. And I just think COVID, it comes down to making sure that, there were so many volunteers who had to come and did amazing work. And, in the end, with the scope of it, everyone needed to be paid. Like, and that's where I think everyone would like to see it go. If it was gonna happen again, it needs to happen. It needs to be done justice in every kind of regard. And COVID-19, any threat of it being cancelled halfway through it's not worth the trouble. But it's lying dormant. I love Pushing Borders. Like, people are still kind of mentioning it and like, it's lying dormant. Is it going to come? Oh, I've heard a rumor it's going to be here. I've heard a rumor it's going to be here. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea. I don't think I'll be involved in organizing the next one. Yeah. And the next one. But I mean, it's amazing to kind of also be one of those people just kind of waiting for the drop, for the Instagram post to go up one day.
Yeah. Before we get to the Skateroom, which is your current main occupation, if I can call it that, I saw that you worked not too long ago for an agency in Amsterdam called Super Stories. I was just interested in that because I also saw that it covered fashion and also natural wine. And I used to work in the wine business myself for a few years, so I was just interested in hearing a little bit about how you were involved with them and what kind of work you were brought to cover with these guys.
Yeah, so back when I was in Athens and Skateism was first starting, I also had a first editor job for this very, very long-standing Greek fashion magazine called Oisín, which is owned by Yorgos Kalefis, who's a good friend of mine. And he really helped me out. And when I moved to Amsterdam a year later or whatever, which is where I've been living kind of on and off since, he was able to hook me up with Peter Van Roon, who's the owner and creative director of Superstories agency. And this was a part-time position that I held for many years, learning a lot about the creative industries and learning a lot about communications. And Peter himself had also previously run Code magazine, which in Amsterdam was a big kind of style publication in its own right. And everything he did, he comes at it from a very storytelling first, substance first angle. And it taught me a lot about how to tell a story from finding where the real human value is in it. You know what I mean? And not necessarily falling by the structures of storytelling that we are told all the time are the main ones, the hero's journey or anything like that. I think he was very, very holistic and very human focused in the way he tells stories. And it was also like a surrogate family and kind of almost like a lifeboat at times, because if things were going well with my other projects, I was able to kind of negotiate and be like, look, I need to take some time or go down to 2 days a week so I can do Pushing Borders, for example. And at other times when I was like, I need to step away from this project, I need some money, he'd be like, okay, cool, well, you can come on board and we'll find some extra things for you to do. And so we were very close throughout the 5 years, and he was always super supportive of everything. And he came from even a skate background himself. He used to run Reload magazine, which was a skate and surf and maybe snow publication, I think. And so he also understood that world and what you're going through when you're trying to, kick these projects up. And he, because he loved all these little cultures, it was always, I always found it really funny in that office because, one moment you've got boxes and boxes of natural wine turning up and he's just uncorking them. He's like, everyone learned about this because we're going to be doing a project where we work in this industry and the next month it would be speakers coming in to try them out because we had a client in that world, or denim. We did a lot of work in denim, so we had to learn everything about denim. And it was it's actually really funny how, in order for us to do the kind of substantial storytelling we were doing and the commercial work we were doing, we needed to know in a much deeper way than you would usually, what are these scenes actually about? And natural wine was just one that stuck. Like that was one of the ones where, you know, with the connections we made while we were doing that in Amsterdam, I kept up with those stores and those distributors. And my best friend, Laura Lee, she's now working at a natural wine store called Rebel Wines and is killing it. She's really in the wine world. So it's been nice to kind of learn through her because I don't think I've got the most developed palate. I don't think and it's also not where I come from. For me, what I love about natural wine is that you've got people who like quit their jobs in IT, bought a horse and rode that horse to like the other side of the world just to like pick a grape. And it's just like there are these crazy stories behind every bottle. And that reminded me of skating a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like...
Very true, yeah.
Yeah, those individuals who are doing something really different in a culture, you know, regardless of what the culture is, and in some way subverting those traditions that can be seen as kind of quite exclusive, like wine has, and offering something fresh, you know. But I mean, I don't know how you see it, like how you worked in the wine world, like what's your kind of take on the natural thing?
Well, I have a kind of a strange history with wine and alcohol in general. I actually don't drink anymore because I drank too much in my life, basically. But I was super passionate about natural wine because it was kind of like with anything. I first started to learn about wine and then got interested in organic agriculture and then eventually learned about natural wine and absolutely loved it, even though a part of it is a bit snobby and a little elitist, you know. At least in Paris it was, where I was living and working. And I didn't really like that part of it because I always viewed wine just as it's basically just grape juice fermented. You know, it's a very simple product. It's very accessible. It doesn't have to be this super like snobby thing. But I think the storytelling around wine and especially natural wine is super interesting, and there's some parallels between skateboarding and natural wine in a way, in the sense that there's just some super interesting people and who have interesting life paths in both worlds, basically.
I think, I totally agree. It's like, it was what attracted me to it. Is it's like you open the thing, do you like the taste of it or not? That's all that matters. And beyond that, it's, you know, what made you buy the bottle in the first place? Well, usually it's because someone like my mate gave you the story behind the bottle and you went, yeah, I resonate with that. Like, I like that aspect of it more than, you know, the
actual taste side of it, or
or like the elitist side of it, where it's like you should drink it because it's this appellation, this grape, whatever. Because I mean, I know if I have to place a bet, I know what I can kind of which bottles I'm going to like more than others based on those things. But generally speaking, I'd rather try something and like it less based on knowing that it's this crazy story, like than and that's kind of the same with everything throughout, you know, the years I've been working in these in telling stories and things. Is it's the more you let the person kind of tell their own story and don't try and put this framework of tradition or of what's expected from a story on it, the more you actually listening to what the story is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the more interesting way of going at it, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And so let's talk about the Skateroom. So you started working over there not too long ago, right? It's been like a year or not even a year?
Yeah. Not even a year, just under a year. Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about the Skateroom in itself? Like what's its mission basically, and how you got involved with them, and then we can talk about some of the projects you're working on over there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The Skateroom is a social entrepreneurship kind of business which works with the world's most influential artists or their foundations and estates, and through those collaboration creates editions on skateboards of art and then sells those, and with the profits from those, 10% of the revenue from all of that goes towards funding skateboarding social projects. And
that's right, yeah.
We're approaching like $1.5 million in funding for social projects since 2014, wow. And the aim is it really looks like that's going to accelerate, and it's a super exciting project. You know, I knew about them for a long time. I interviewed Charles-Antoine, the founder, many years ago, and I loved the concept. But what I found interesting about it was that a lot of people had seen the boards, the editions, and didn't know about the social engagement aspect.
Yeah.
And obviously in the world I was in, I knew about the social engagement aspect because I was chatting with my friends and they were saying, oh, we're funded by the Skateroom. Or I was attending events like Pushing Borders. The Skateroom was at Pushing Borders.
Yeah.
So in the inside, you know about it. And that world, the social skate world, they know about it. It's a culture and everyone gets it. In the skate world more generally, people see it and think, well, that's like not a skateboarding related graphic, for example. So I don't resonate with it, for example, or the price point is too high because it's not, I mean, you should skate them for sure if you want to skate them, but like, you know, that's your wallet. But no, it was the fact that the model, I think for people, the model, once the model is clear, people really get it and really understand the benefit of it. And it's also a B Corp. So it's got which is a sort of ethical business certification, which is become an increasingly kind of cool thing to be. And
absolutely.
Yeah, so you focus on that social engagement, transparency, sustainability, all of that through your business. And there's obviously still a long way to go with any of those things. Like all those words, they're thrown around so much, you know, sustainability, transparency, all that. But like the B Corp thing gives you a goal and a framework with which to work towards like true goals that you can reach. So that's fun. So in everything in our DNA day to day, we work towards those things. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's really fun. And honestly, it's been, you know, obviously there's been a lot for working from home over this last year. So I haven't spent as much time with the team as I would like. And they're based in Brussels and I'm based in Amsterdam, but I'm going there on Sunday for 2 weeks. I go there as often as possible. And it's just the loveliest team of people. Like everyone's really excited by every project. People really get what they do. They really appreciate what they do. And, you know, I'm not coming from the art side. I'm coming from the skate side. And you've got people who are coming from the art side and not the skate side. So you have these real beautiful moments of education, learning about these things. And, you know, I'd known, for example, Charles Antoine, I'd known Clara Badieu, who is the impact manager at the Skateroom. I'd known for a long time because she was sort of the face that would appear at the events and things a lot. And these are people who I'd already had a good relationship with. And so it was just logical, I think, that when they were looking for a writer, I sort of wrote them an email saying, you know, I'd like to be a lot more to you than a writer. Like, I'd like to come in and help manage things. And so we slowly developed this kind of communications management role and sort of where I'm sitting now. And, you know, we just released the Moch Gonzales collaboration.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. Yeah, the little video. It was pretty cool. Yeah. Can you tell me about that specific project? What is it exactly? It's a line of boards basically that he designed, or?
Exactly. So we're working with Heavyweight Gallery in LA, who are doing a solo exhibition with Moch Gonzales. And basically we wanted to do a collection of very limited hand-touched, so hand-altered editions with Moch, which could be unveiled at that event and then would also be able to be sold online and on our web store. And I think the majority of the run is going to be sold at the event and at Heavyweight with 10 hand-altered editions of each artwork. There's three artworks sold on our website. And again, 10% of the revenue from that is going towards a social skate charity. And in this case, it's Seven Hills in Amman, Jordan, which is an amazing organization that I, again, known about for a while, popped up through Pushing Borders and all those things. And so you can see in that film we dropped, whenever this podcast goes out, the day we dropped it, whenever that was, you can see the link there between, like, you know, Mark's real poetic outlook on what skating is and what it doesn't have to be, and linked to, you know, the way that these kids in Jordan are completely
reshaping skateboarding.
Yeah, reshaping their own they're shaping their own culture of skateboarding in a way that allows them to bridge cultural borders between them. You know, Jordan is full of different communities, and there are some communities like that don't have any real public service, don't have any real kind of benefits or privilege at all. And then there are others which have a huge amount of privilege, and skateboarding has been a way where publicly these kind of communities can come together. And so that's the aim of this collection specifically, is to help that mission.
Yeah, that's super sick. Yeah. And so like, if people that are listening to this want to like get involved with the Skateroom, what's the best way? Do they just go to the website, and can they like order boards from there, or?
Totally. Yeah, you can do that. You can go on the website. You can order boards. You can reach out to us on, you know, at the Skateroom or on email or whatever, and let us know if you have a cool idea or you want to be involved in some way. You know, we've been involved in events in the past. As I say, they're involved in Pushing Borders. They've been involved in smaller projects. You know, we invited artists to our gallery space in Brussels last year to kind of create live artworks, and there's something coming this year for the same time. Brussels Gallery weekend. So there's a lot of ways. And, you know, we're really interested from my side, specifically in my role, I'm really interested in bringing in the true culture of skateboarding and non-traditional skateboarding specifically into this world we're creating and to make more links between these projects. You know, the Good Push Alliance.
Oh, yeah.
Run by Rhiannon Bader and Skateism, like, again, massive shout out. And Ruby from Free Movement is now working with them. You know, they're a real central network of projects. And we work very closely with them in order to work out, you know, which projects can we
support,
really help. Yeah, support and grow and or build skate parks with or whatever. And just making those links to all of these networks. Like the more people come together and work together on these things, you know, the more of an alliance you become to shift and shape and reshape the parts of skateboarding and the parts of the industry that maybe need to be refreshed or, you know, given a new lease on life. So that's kind of what it's about. So definitely link up with the Skateroom for sure. Like, let's do it.
Amazing. All right. Well, one question that I try to ask people towards the end of my interviews nowadays is, what would you say is like the best lesson or the most precious thing that you've learned through skateboarding?
I mean, I think, to be honest, it's maybe I've said it already, but it's like nothing has to be what people tell you it has to be. And that includes skateboarding, and especially skateboarding has taught me that, like, not only seeing as a kid, you know, the people who were pushing to reshape their skate scene and what they thought skateboarding should be, not only through my career, the magazine, with the conference, with all of that, and meeting all the amazing people along the way who worked so hard on all these projects. And not only now in this social skate world where I see skateboarding pop up all over the world in different ways and completely deconstructing the perceived notions of what skating is. Like, you can just see it day to day even. Do you know what I mean? You can see it when you see someone at a skate park who doesn't look fully comfortable and you just go up, say hi and like invite them in and like spend 5 minutes just being like, isn't it well funny when you fall over and like get back up? Because that's ultimately what it's about. Like, the only reason anyone keeps skating is because they have a very specific type of brain that means that when they fall over, they for some reason do it again. Like, that's what we all have in common ultimately, I guess, right? It's like this kind of
that's true.
Strange masochism. But I think that that's the lesson I've learned is like, whenever anyone turns around and be like, nah, skater is this, or no, you know, this is the way you need to do something, or this is what this is, or whatever. It's like, I just see so many examples where that isn't the case all the time, that it's hard to take anyone seriously. And that extends to most things, like outside of skateboarding as well. It's like,
of course,
anyone who's really sure about what something is maybe needs to take a moment and research whether it
think again.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I have questions from people that know you a little bit.
I'm excited for this.
Hi, Osh, it's Jess here from Skateism. You've interviewed people and written about some of the most interesting aspects of the social skate sector over the years. I'm interested to know, what are the projects and initiatives that are really inspiring you right now?
Props to Jessica. Cheers for the question, mate. I mean, the ones that all of these projects that pop up along the way inspire me so much, but I have to say that it is the ones that I know the most about the inner workings of are the ones that are easiest to get inspired by. Like the Free Movement Skateboarding project, I've been involved with it and I've seen it, and I've seen the lengths and the work that these people, and a lot of them are my friends, you know, like go to. And that doesn't mean necessarily that they work harder than any of these other projects, but when you see behind the curtain, right, and you can see what goes into it, like that for me has been, because again, everything I do, it comes from the story, and the more you know about the story, the more of a human link there is to that. I think that's a big one. And, you know, I mean, a big part for me was the acceptance I felt getting closer to people like Sam and getting closer to people who specifically were pushing for, just like a more diverse conversation in skateboarding. And this is coming from a place of, you know, coming from a pretty privileged background where I haven't had to go through that much in terms of like identity kind of crises or anything like this, where I'm wondering, you know, who I am, what I want, but still being a kid and remember being bullied for a lot of things that I was doing, things that I was wearing, things like that. And, you know, to some degree being able to feel unconditionally accepted by certain people I've met along the way has also been a massive thing. And, you know, in the most kind of modest way possible, like, not that this is worth a lot, but thank you so much to all those people for inspiring me to keep going on what I was doing as kind of small as it was, you know. And shout out to Jessica and Skateism, of course, because it's always a pleasure to chat with them and do anything with them.
Yeah, they're cool people out there, All right, so this other question, I won't tell you who it is, and let's see if you can recognize the voice.
All right.
Hey, my question for you is, what's the biggest good change you've seen in skateboarding since you started working for Skateism? And part 2 of that question is, what do you think is the next change that skateboarding as a whole needs to do to become even better, cooler, and more inclusive? Thank you for being you. See you soon. Bye.
So yeah, John, man, I think the biggest positive shift has been the ability for people to, I mean, this is a tired old phrase, but open a dialogue around so many things. And that extends to, magazines, podcasts like this one, films, conferences, all of that, like seeing more and more, like I think a new skate magazine called Mess just got started, and the Skate Witches, which has been around for ages, and Quail Skate magazine. There's tons like that. And then you had, endless list of amazing projects, which like this podcast though, they focus on like talking a little bit more about what's actually happening. Because when a culture like skateboarding is kind of on fire and you've got powers from the outside that want a piece of it, it's super important to work out, okay, which pieces are we willing to give and which pieces do we want to kind of hold dear? And I think that this is something that I've believed for a long time, is that the more a subculture gets preyed upon by the kind of broader culture, i.e. the more people want to look and feel like a skater and want to wear skateboarding and have skateboarding in films and stuff, the more exclusive or the more protective and conservative people become, because they need to hold on to, no, this bit is ours, like stop appropriating it or whatever, right? But the problem that does is you kind of close the doors on everyone. So I think that's what was happening at the time. This is my like 2 cents on it, right? I mean, it's probably like, there's probably a lot more going on, but my 2 cents at the time was like, at the same time as a lot of mainstream cultural influences were trying to hit skateboarding, a lot of new wave, non-traditional influences were also trying to hit skateboarding. And the quote unquote core, whatever the hell that is, kind of put up its walls and was like, nah, skateboarding is this thing. And it meant that you ended up keeping both of them out. And actually the biggest and most positive shift has been those fringe aspects and those non-traditional movements in skateboarding have been able to get in and influence and change skateboarding. And actually, weirdly, it was some of those bigger mainstream, influences which were able to assist in some way for that to happen as well. I mean, like, for example, the big shoe companies were the first who were able to give non-male athletes living wages and stuff in skateboarding, but doesn't mean it's like that fixes everything, but it's definitely an interesting facet when you look at how that wasn't the case for a lot of non-big corporate brands, because they didn't have the budget, because it was so, at war with the kind of those bigger brands. It's a very complicated world, but I think that we closed a lot of doors on influences and people which were actually going to be progressive for skateboarding and to change conversations. And the biggest positive shift has been that more and more bridges are being built to create those conversations and to allow them to happen and to tell those stories and invite more people inside or create their own worlds and invite, I don't know. And then the next big shift, I don't know, man. I feel like it's probably not me to say. I'm not sure my barometer is I'm not sure I'm detecting what the next big shift would be. But I would say that what we're looking at now culturally in the West is a next generation of kids who are awake to a lot of things that the previous generations weren't. And that's going to massively change the way that all subcultures operate, all of them. And I think that we definitely need to have a long look at how much the tech world plays into that, how much time people are spending on their devices and stuff, when this is a fundamentally social and outdoor activity. Yeah. But aside from that aspect, I think the kids have it. I think they've got it. As long as these platforms for conversation and for storytelling continue to do the work to find where these stories are, continue to invite, people from different walks of life on to tell different stories and to show the next generation that no story, no perceived notion of what something is has to be how it is. It can be different. It can be different. It can be different. As long as that keeps happening, then every individual will feel accepted and that they can tread their own path and take it where they want to take it. Yeah. So I hope that I don't know what the next shift will be. That's up to the next generation, but we can definitely do our most to give them the tools they need to make it happen, That's
it for my conversation with Oisín. For more information about everything we mentioned throughout our conversation, I will put some links up in the description. For the Skateroom, go visit their website theskateroom.com or check out their Instagram account at theskateroom. While you're at it, go support Free Movement Skateboarding in Athens at freemovement_SB, as well as Skateism at Skateism, and keep your eyes open for hopefully a new edition of Pushing Borders at Pushing Borders. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon for a new episode of Beyond Boards.